The movie begins with a strange man digging in the dark. He then holds up a photograph covered in mud. The protagonist, Barnaby Bates, is a struggling screenplay writer in LA. After finishing an improv show, he meets a woman named Rose. He wasn't expecting her at the show. She assures him that she was only there to take pictures, as requested by a friend. Barnaby is displeased with his play, but Rose protests, saying he's too hard on himself. He apologizes for not calling her after their last time together, but she understands that he had been busy, like always. They spend the night together again, but Barnaby regrets it and calls it a mistake. He walks out, exasperated with himself, when he notices a shabby man in a yellow raincoat stumbling over in the trash cans. Barnaby pretends he didn't see him and walks ahead, eventually dashing to his apartment as the man runs after him. The man catches up and suddenly compliments Barnaby's show, taking him aback. He has a freakish aura about him, and he repeats his words a lot. He continues to hail Barnaby as a great, talented, and courageous man. Barnaby accepts his compliments with both gratitude and confusion. The man apologizes for scaring Barnaby, and after expressing his delight in meeting him, he takes off running. It seems that Barnaby lacks confidence in himself while doing improv, perhaps due to the fear of getting booed by the audience. He wakes up to text messages from Rose, asking to talk, and a client canceling a meeting with Barnaby's sketch group called Fart Squad 5. He bluntly refuses Rose's request, but overwhelmingly assures the client that he's available for rescheduling at any time. We get a peek at his morning routine, which consists of a very unproductive sketch group meeting, a reprimanding session with his screenwriters who can't come up with pitch-worthy hooks, and a comically flopped sketch marketing discussion. Apparently, their Fart Squad 5 t-shirts don't do much. Barnaby arrives at his improv lessons, where the class coordinator subtly suggests he quit because he never plays, but he dismisses it, saying he just needs reps. Unexpectedly, the yellow raincoat man appears too and signs up for the day's lessons with a crumpled $20 bill and an interesting name, Copper Fencing. After class, Barnaby watches Copper's antics as he climbs trees, eats cake, and rummages through the trash again. He carries suspicious-looking trash bags on a cart, and Barnaby can't help but follow him. Copper disappears into a house and Barnaby slides in. He is horrified to see a human foot poking out of a trash bag, but not for long before Copper knocks him out. He wakes up in a bathroom and tries coaxing Copper into letting him go. Copper is sorry for tying him up. He brings up how strikingly similar they both look and assumes Barnaby has put it together. Still confused about everything, Barnaby denies having figured anything out. Copper explains that he is Barnaby's son from the future. Barnaby plays along with his absurd tale and pleads with him to let Dad go. Copper shows him a dusty photograph of Barnaby that he's had for as long as he can remember. His mother had left it for him. Barnaby continues to bargain with Copper, saying he can't afford to pass away, as he has many things he needs to do with his life. Copper asks him to hurry with those things, as he only has around 10 months left. A bewildered Barnaby gets knocked out again. He wakes up on a street and rushes to his apartment, where he finds Rose waiting for him. Rose tells him she's pregnant with his child and she's not asking him for anything, but he deserves to know. Barnaby falls silent and just asks her for pictures she took at the improv show that day. She is speechless but gives him the camera roll anyway. He prints them out and goes through them to find a photo similar to what Copper had shown him. He meets Copper and confirms it to be the exact same picture. Barnaby demands an explanation from Copper. He says there will be a huge disaster 10 months from now which will wipe out half of civilization. However, he's clueless as to what kind of disaster or who will be responsible. Copper shows Barnaby his time machine, a bizarre metal storage shed that works with the simple use of black and green rocks, and a main door as the portal. Copper is not sure how time travel works and assumes it's space crystals or something, earning an earful from his frustrated dad. Barnaby concludes the situation as his clueless son from the future, who looks like a homeless fisherman with a cake and a deceased body in his house, coming to warn him about a disaster. He portrays this as an end-of-the-world scenario with limited information to his team and asks for their thoughts and ideas on how the protagonist can save the future. They compare it to escape rooms and murder mysteries. The writers are free to question Copper, and they ask him why the future son is traveling back in time. He sums it up as a cleanup mission or getting rid of deceased human bodies. The scenario is thus set as two groups of time travelers, namely, the assassin guys and the cleanup crew. The time assassins take out human targets, possibly the leaders of future rebellion forces, and the time janitors dispose of the bodies, leaving no trace. Zoe, a Fart Squad 5 writer, brings up the question of location. How do the janitors know where to find the bodies? Copper explains that they are given green cards and red cards. The green cards are places to be, times, places, and people, and the red cards are places never to be. The fact that time assassins don't get such cards develops into a hint that they can be abducted and interrogated. Barnaby and Copper plan to arrive beforehand at the place where an assassin would drop off a target's body in 2 days to capture him. Copper is worried because he is prohibited from doing so, but Barnaby encourages him by referring to them as a team. He says he needs Copper to help him save the future. They also share a small bonding moment where Barnaby opens up about his unsupportive parents. His mom wasn't around and his dad was miserable after his unsuccessful acting career, which he blamed Barnaby for. Barnaby takes an excited Copper to improv class the next day. Rose expresses her disappointment in Barnaby over text and she asks if he even cares. An enthusiastic classmate named Hannah invites them to an improv show called Butt Lumps by her team Diarrhea Dance Party. Barnaby passes initially, but when Copper wishes to meet his mother, he agrees to take him to the show instead. After a good freshen up, Copper and Barnaby arrive at the show. Hannah's team bails on her, so she pleads for them to join her. She initiates an improv scene on the topic time, as an angry wife scolding her husband for coming in late. Copper joins the scene hesitatingly, but his clueless self is unable to take it any further. Barnaby steps off the back line, pushing his anxiety aside, and takes on the act. He switches the story through comical dialogues into their current situation of a father and time traveler son. The audience finds it hilarious and entertaining. At an after-party, Barnaby enlightens Copper about Hannah's interest in him. Copper wants to try holding hands with her, something he's never done before, but he fails, being too scared. Barnaby recalls when he first met Rose, when she had made the first move and had his heart, but it all ended before it could start, as he had chosen his career before their relationship. As they wait for the assassin, Copper reveals that 75% of homeless people are time travelers waiting for their mission. This is so that they blend in among the masses. They catch the assassin and knock him out, tying him up in the bathroom. When he gains consciousness, he pretends he is a normal man with a family, until Copper argues they are not allowed to have families. The assassin sneers at them and warns Barnaby that if he tries to change anything, he will end up destroying everything. He explains that time is like a stack of bricks, with every moment stacked over another, and the wall is already built, perfectly placing the past, present, and future. But if he moves a single brick, that is, cause a paradox, the whole wall will come crashing down. Copper agrees, recalling paradox drills they were made to run. The assassin elaborates that their missions are calculated risks, which is why they're given the green and red cards. The green cards lead to minor changes, but if they interact with anyone on the red cards, it would result in a lot of damage. Barnaby calls it bullshit. The assassin warns that it is dangerous for them to even be in the same room, and they might be causing a paradox at the very moment, and only he would be able to tell the difference. Copper hints at his bracelet, and before the assassin could stop them, he's knocked out again. They take his silver bracelet and Barnaby puts it on, ready for a test. They plan to call someone on the red card, retrieving his contact from a phone book. Copper mentions that the bracelet protects Barnaby and anyone he's touching skin to skin. But the rest of the world is at risk, in case a paradox happens. There are signs that a paradox has happened or is currently taking place. One of them is the disappearance of the cake, which Copper carries around. And the other is reaching an unexpected place when you open a door. If that happens, one must keep going through doors until they come back to where they started. This would indicate that a paradox has taken place. They ring up a person on the red card and talk to him whilst being attached skin to skin. But the cake remains cake and the door opens to the same place. Barnaby is sure that the assassin was bluffing. He gets an urgent call from his sketch team and leaves, entrusting Copper with the assassin. The client who previously canceled on them has arranged a conference and a meeting with a networking company. Everyone is delighted and preparing for the meeting, but when Barnaby mentions Zoe, a team member, nobody seems to know her. He thinks they are joking until he notices that their merch t-shirts spell Fart Squad 4. In a frenzy, he rushes back to Copper, informing him that they paradoxed Zoe out of existence. Copper has lost the assassin, who disappeared through the time box. Fear takes over Copper because the assassin had traveled forward in time and will tell on them. He warns Barnaby that they will send people from the future to eliminate them once they figure out what they have done. They grab their stuff and flee to Barnaby's apartment, escaping an assassin on their way. Rose waits at Barnaby's again and informs him that she's leaving for Philadelphia to live with her aunt until the baby is born. Copper's ears perk up at the information, but Barnaby covers it up as a result of the paradox. Rose gives Barnaby a chance to stop her and ask her to stay if he really loves her, but he cannot bring himself to say anything. She is devastated and leaves with a goodbye. Barnaby asks Copper to leave as well. He says they're not a team but a couple of idiots who don't know what they're doing. He realizes what they're messing with is dangerous, and the more time they spend together the worse things would get. Copper refuses to leave, but Barnaby doesn't take no for an answer. A dejected Copper finally leaves, with a harsh remark at how easy it is for Barnaby to always get rid of him. Barnaby locks the door and goes to sleep, but reconsiders taking off the bracelet. Outside, Copper is chased by multiple hooded men, most likely a group of assassins. He escapes them somehow and ends up at the improv class where he meets Rose. She apologizes for what he had to witness last night. She notices that he's bleeding and offers to clean him up. Her motherly instincts kick in as she asks him to buy a better-fitting coat next time. As she treats his wounds, Copper asks her how far along she is, and whether she wants to keep the baby. She says it's been 6 weeks and she's looking for adoption agencies. He mentions that he's adopted too and knows what it feels like. He says he feels small, as if nothing he does matters because the people who made him just tossed him away like garbage without giving him anything, not even a name. Rose claims that he's wrong, and if she ever gives up her child it would be because she wants something more for them, a chance to have things that she cannot give them. He asks if she loves her son, later fixing his words, saying he guessed the gender. Rose says she loves it with everything she is and that she's sure Copper's mom loves him too. He gets up to leave, asking if she has thought of any names for the baby. She calls her Everly Rose Dorset. Copper calls Barnaby, who's in for a meeting, and says he's doing something soon. He mentions meeting his mom, whom he found wonderful. He says maybe Barnaby's dad wasn't miserable because he was unsuccessful, but because he never realized what a wonderful family he had. Barnaby warns him not to do anything, but Copper has already abducted a bunch of red card people and is setting the rocks in the time box. He claims he's going to paradox everything. A red card man wakes up and asks who Copper is, to which he replies, Everly Rose Dorset, and pushes the button. Barnaby discards the meeting and hurries over to Rose. He pulls out the door to the improv class but ends up teleporting to a strange house. He goes through multiple doors and various places again and again until he finally comes back to the improv class. He calls for Rose but receives no response. He begins to think she had disappeared, but she shows up, wondering what's going on. Extremely relieved, Barnaby asks Rose to stay and states that it doesn't matter what happens tomorrow as long as he's with her. She is immensely happy and they both reunite, but shortly after, she says they need to seek cover because it's dark soon and the lobster people are looking for them.